So my name is Lucia Damisa. I'm a fantasy and romance author. Like not quite romantasy, but I write fantasy and I write romance books. And my debut novel, A Desert of Bleeding Sand, will be coming out in spring 2025 with Darkan Press. So yeah.
I'm actually really excited to to get to read your book. It's all the
Thank
tropes and
you.
everything is like right up my alley, so I can't wait.
Thank you so much.
What was your inspiration for A Desert of Bleeding Sand?
Okay, so my first inspiration was like I feel every author has a different approach to how they come up with ideas for their stories. And like mine is like often because what got me started on writing was watching movies. So it's like when I read books and like maybe the story goes in one way and I'm like, oh, but what if the story went in this way? So that is all and like often like a source of inspiration for me. So I was reading this book, Dance of Thieves by Mary Pearson,
Yeah.
and like I was just obsessed with like the dynamic between the two major characters. So I was like, I've read enemies to lovers, but I'm like, I don't think I've ever read like rivals to lovers because I'm like, these two people don't hate each other, but yeah,
Yeah.
they're on different sides of like the situation. So like, I want to do that, but like, it just like sat at the back of my mind because there was no, like, I didn't have a storyline, I didn't have characters, I didn't have anything. But then it was because I often pitch a desert of bleeding sand as Mr. and Mrs. Smith in the Sahara Desert Palace. But what inspired it originally was like a happening like in the world, like it's called like you should check the hashtag Bring Back Our Girls. You
Yeah.
would see like when it happened like some years back, but then over time it started to recall where like these bandits would go to like high schools and just like kidnap hundreds of girls from school and all of that. So that happened around that time. And everybody was talking about it on social media. And me, I'm not the most talkative person. And I feel like if there's a matter on ground and people are already talking about it, I don't usually feel like I have anything else to say, especially like when I look, and everybody has said like what's on my mind. But yeah, I still needed to express myself. So I thought about it. I was like, okay, I have this like interesting, there's this passion to write about like rivals to lovers, but I didn't have a story. And I really want to talk about this thing. Or like I really need to express myself because like it weighs on my heart. So I was like, okay, let me write a book about this situation. So that was how it came together, like rivals to lovers, and then the Bring Back Our Girls movement, because it was like the situation was happening and the politicians, the government weren't really attending to it. So it was mostly the youths, like, speaking out, crying out, like, hear us, help us, bring back our girls and all of that. And I was one of those youths. So I decided, okay, I was going to like write this story to like, give the youths a voice and, tell the stories of those girls. And yeah, so that was the basic foundation of where it is that of Bleeding Sand came from. And then as I wrote on, we started to grow and expand, like having other themes and all of that. So yeah.
I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people because it's such a big issue and everyone was speaking out about it too. So I think a lot of people will sort of really feel the impact of your story when they get their hands on it.
Yeah, I hope so.
What drew you to writing in the first place?
Okay. I mentioned it earlier. It was like movies because many writers came to writing through reading, but I didn't have reading like very early on as a kid. It was mostly like movies. So it was just like when I watched these romance movies that were like very high school musical-esque, and I'm like, oh, I wanted more romance. But because it's like I was like 11 at that point. But it was like YA was young adults, so they were always very like careful with the romance. So I was like, oh, I want them to like hold hands longer. I want them to kiss more. And so I would like pick up like that drove me to like taking my book, sheets of paper, and start writing. And then I'll write a story and get to the point where they've held hands for as long as I wanted them to. And then I'll abandon the story. So it was watching movies that like going to settings that intrigued me. That was what led me to writing.
What did that assist in your process of writing A Desert of Bleeding Sand? Did you, other than the research and the experiences that you already had?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
What was your process for writing
Okay,
your book?
all right. So writing the Desert of Bleeding Sand, I feel like I already had the plots because I knew from like the experience of the Bring Back Our Girls movement, I knew how it was going to go. I knew all the things I wanted to talk about and all of that. So like that one already gave me the framework, but it was like, you know, getting to know the characters, like that was where I started to like, need to do research. And also like, because I saw like one of the questions are about world building. So I feel like these two go hand in hand,
Yeah,
like the
they
process.
do.
Because I didn't have a world. I had like the characters from, wanting to create a rivals to lovers kind of story. I had the plots, but I didn't have a world to like set them in. And so I was like, okay, let me just have a like, what will I call it now? Like a placeholder world. And I just said, okay, I will frame it after my country. That's my birth country. And I will just like, because we have a tribal based system. Like we have states and each states have their tribes. And like that is how we come together to form a nation. So I was like, okay, I will just use that as a temporary background. But then when I started using that, like it just became so prominent, so pregnant. Even though like there was some world building, like I changed names and all of that, but it just like fit so well. And like that was how, I started to work with that. That was how the world building came about. Then the characters, yeah, from the book that inspired me. But then they also came into being on their own. And then, yeah. So that was how this thing
How did you
came
pick?
about.
How
I'm
did
sorry,
you?
I feel like I answered the question
And
well.
that's completely fine. How did you come up with the fantastical elements for your book then, since you were basing it off your own country?
Okay. Okay. So this actually happened because the first fantasy book I experimented with was full of like fantastical creatures. And then when I wrote this one, I was so fixated on the message I wanted to tell that the fantasy aspect was kind of lacking. So my younger sister is my first beta reader. And she was one that brought my attention to it. She was like, if you're going to pitch this as a fantasy book, I think we need, to see something other than what we already know. So when she said, he sat in my mind. And then another of my beta readers read the book too. And like it was actually like unlike my first process where I went in wanting to create the most magical world. This one, it was people who were telling me, like, oh, we need more fantasy, we need more fantasy. And each time like it made me more excited because I felt like, oh, for a story with this like serious-ish plot line, I needed to also be serious. But then
Yeah.
each time somebody asked for more fantasy elements, it felt like permission to, add the dragons and add the shapeshifters and add the wraiths and all of that, and like to explore them more. So it's actually intriguing for me to say that the fantasy element didn't come originally from me. It was just from these like amazing ideas from like my beta readers and my critic partners. And when I eventually got to a point where I was like, okay, like I can like let the fantasy, like, make the fantastical part of my brain run free. Like it was just like wild from there and, checking out like folklore and some creatures, like, because as I said, it has a tribal system and these
Yeah.
tribes are like inspired by like the different tribes in Nigeria, my country. So it's like I will check this tribe, like, oh, what are their mythical creatures there? And other than a tribal based system, it's also a world based system because Nigeria was initially colonized. So I went back to like, do research on like some of the countries that colonized us. And so it's like some of the, other than the kingdom itself, the external kingdoms are representatives of like these, like, countries that colonized us like in the past. So it was also going to check them, check their folklore, check their histories, like gain information from them, like search for some of their most fascinating, like fun, like myths, rather. Let me not say fantastical characters, but like myths and bring, yeah, I can like bring all of that together. So it was just so rich and so lush and just all these moments where you're writing and you pause and you're like, okay, let me check for this thing, and you find something and like, whoa, like if I didn't check for this thing, I wouldn't have known that this extremely exciting like being or legend existed. So it was like the fantastical part, the world building, it was just rich and exciting, like from different places, from different areas. So yeah.
That's actually really, really cool. But it's also really interesting to hear that like your message was like the core of your book, and then everything else came in after, which is like at least you know that your
Yeah.
message is actually getting out there without being distracted by all the fantasy elements. Like the fantasy is like
Yeah.
a plus, which is really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Thank you.
which of your characters do you relate to the most?
Okay, so I have it has a two point of view. Like it has 2 point of views. So the female character, the female MC, her name is Zair. And then the male MC, his name is Dayton. So I feel like it was easier for me to write Dayton because he's like more humorous. Like he has a lot going on, yeah. But like he has this dry sense of humor. While Zay, like I just wrote her because, like I said, I knew the plot and I knew what she was supposed to do. I knew how she was supposed to go about it. But I think it was at the second or third draft when I started to realize how similar to me she was, because she's a quiet MC, and quiet MCs are not easy to write. Like it's so much easier to write like the sassy MCs that always have the best comebacks and always
Yeah.
have something to say and respond. But like the quiet MCs, you have to prompt them to say something. Like other than just think is in their dialogue, you're like, no, this is like a point where you should speak. And it was just from realizing like how quiet she was, and like she was quiet, but she had such a rich mind. She had ideas, she had opinions, she had like interest, she loves reading, she loves traveling and all of that. So it was just from realizing that in like the second draft, that was when I was like, oh my God, like she's so much like me. Like she's more badass than I am, with her bow and arrows and all of that. So like that's to know that she's braver and everything. But it was just that quiet side, like I just connected with her so much. And it even got to a point where I was like, okay, other than the fact that she can fight, she can do this, she can do that, I'm like, what does she do in her spare time? And it took me a puzzlingly long time to figure that out, because I was like, oh, maybe she likes, I don't know, something that has to do with like fighting. But eventually I was like, she's quiet, she's introspective, she's smart. I was like, she's a reader. She loves
Yeah.
reading, she loves books. And like, how did that take me so long to figure out? So like yeah, like, and when I found out that okay, she was a reader, and like quotes from books stay longer in her mind, they inspire her, I started to see more and more how similar she is to me. So even as I like work on, because it's a series, so even as I work on the other books in the series, I just get this moment where I'm like, oh, my Zare, like my baby Zare, like you are so, like I see myself so much in you. And I'm so excited for these quiet like readers. So also see a hero in that is not like the male MC. Is quite is funny. He's kind of sassy and all of that. But I'm also excited for readers to see someone who is like quiet in the fantasy book. Like she can do all the amazing stuff, but at the end of the day, like she's just someone who listens, who hears, digests things and all of that. So yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a female main character that I can't wait to to read. That's part of
Oh,
me
thank
as
you.
well. Like I'm out and going and talking about and quite happy just to be nice and quiet as well. So never really see those type of
Relatable.
characters in books. How
Yeah.
important was professional editing to your book's development? So what process with editing did you go through with your book?
Okay. So first of all, it was just my beta readers who read the story. But the very interesting part about this book was that I felt like I put it out too quickly, because I started writing at a time when I was trying to get an agent that's for the book before it, and that one wasn't working out. So it was like I was thinking about giving up, and then I thought about it. I was like, well, I've already put so much effort and love and everything into this part, so it wouldn't be good to give up. So at the time when I was writing this book, I wasn't really writing it with like the hope of querying it. My hope was that I would probably have an agent by then. So because querying like a lot of rejections and like it starts making you like wonder like, oh, is my book that good and all of that. So I didn't want this book to go through that, that like doubt and all of that. So I was like, I wasn't going to query it. So it was not at that point of giving up. It just came to my mind that like, okay, just try this book. You love it. Like you've put like so much effort like into it. Like it's not like the other books you've written. So just like give it a try. So it was with that like excitement. I literally sent it to my sister and then to one of my beta readers. And then I sent it out to like in the query trenches. But like I was lucky because the concept, the query letter was strong. The concept was very intriguing. I feel like the first page too was very strong. So even though some agents started passing because it wasn't ready yet, all of them gave me feedback. Like I've not seen like that kind of, most times you get like these that's form responses, just like saying, oh sorry, it wasn't for me. But I was getting like detailed feedbacks, like telling me, oh, trim this down. So that actually was the main revision process, because my sister read it, she gave me valuable feedback. My other beta reader read it, she gave me valuable feedback. But that was just two. And actually like with the first draft. So for books, like you need more. So like those agents, they are professionals. Like they'll either maybe read like the first 50 pages, they'll read like probably the entire thing, and then they'll give me feedback. So I took those feedbacks, I worked with them, and then I sent them to more beta readers. Like, okay, this was what this agent said, and I'm trying to fix that. Like, how do you think it has improved from the way it was before? So that was actually the feedback process. And then I met this agent who was just like, she's new. So I feel like that's probably why she had the bandwidth. Like she took so much time and like care to like point out things, like specific things, like, oh, like take this back, move this back, add this now, explain this and all of that. Like she even told me to add 2 more chapters to the like opening, because she was like, so that readers would connect more with like the characters before we go into like the world building. And so it was just like very detailed. I feel like the kind of feedback you probably pay an editor to give you. So the moment she gave me that feedback and I, implemented it, like I just started getting offers of representation. So like that was mostly so I do feel it's like professional advice and professional feedback, because they're agents and they're skilled in the work. And then after I got those feedback from her and I got like representation, my agent too, she's very, very savvy in like she's very intelligent. She's very book savvy. So I also like worked with her before going on submission. So that was the slightly unusual revision process for my book.
It's so interesting how like different authors go through different processes, but like their books are always really good and they still connects with the readers that they would like it to connect to. So it's really, I find it really interesting to hear about as well.
Me too.
How has writing and publishing a book changed the way you see yourself?
Whoa, like that's a big one, because I feel like before I got to the point where I decided I wanted to be published, it's so funny. Like I've been writing since I was 11. That's like almost 20 years now. Okay, let me just say over 10 years now. Let me not add too much to my age. But yeah, so I've written for a while, but for whatever reason, I never thought I would want to get published. It's so funny because every time I say this to like my friends or my family, they're like, you, like you are definitely going to want to get published at some point. So like for a while, I just saw writing as this like very time consuming hobby. But then it was when I first decided that, okay, maybe I should try to get published. It's now took over my life. Like it got to a point where I was like, if you ask me what I am, I'm a writer, like nothing else. Because the moment I decided that, okay, I wanted to get published, it was like giving myself permission to like get deeply involved in this like hobby. So it just took over my life. It was all I wanted to do, like morning to night. Like I was just like writing. I feel like thinking back now, I could be like, oh, maybe I should have taken this easy a bit. But I feel like I just needed that outlet, like that freedom I give myself that like, okay, you are a writer, right? So like it actually really defined me. I feel like even now, although I'm trying to compartmentalize better, like, find other hobbies, do other things. But I feel like the moment I just decided that I wanted to get published, it came and like it just like, defined who I was, defined like how I live, defined like my friend groups, like how I spend my time. So yeah, it's really like changed, turned my life around, I guess.
Did
But
you
on the
ever,
positive end, it also gave me direction.
that's
Like, yeah, it also gave me direction. Yeah.
did you ever think about self-publishing your books, or did you just want to have it done through a actual publishing house?
Yeah, I definitely like this book. I thought I was going to self-publish it. I was like, if it didn't sell on submission, I was definitely going to self-publish it because it was just a story I needed and wanted to tell. And I was like, I definitely wanted like a publisher to take charge of the whole process, like, the marketing and the other hard parts, the
Yeah.
financial, that's the funding and all of that. But I was like, if it didn't work out, then I definitely wanted to self-publish it because it was just a story I wanted to tell. But when the offer came in, I was very relieved that I didn't have to go down the self-publishing route because I know it can be very hard. And I
Yeah,
applaud authors who actually go down that route. Yeah.
it's they definitely take on everything, and they sometimes don't realize how big of a job it is to self-publish.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was the most valuable piece of advice you've been given about writing?
I feel like I've received so many, not necessarily directly though, because I'm someone who loves to watch like other authors' publication journeys. Like I love watching YouTube videos, I love reading articles, and most times they ask this question. So I feel like this would probably sound like a bit cliche, but the biggest advice is just to like be your number one fan. Like believe in yourself, believe in your story more than more than anything. Because you get to like points of rejections, you get to points where professionals themselves tell you, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that, all of that. And if you don't have like belief in what you wrote, it would be so easy for you to like be swept away. And I think I can be a very quiet and shy person and all of that. But I feel like if there's one thing like I believe and nobody can tell me otherwise like about is when it comes to my stories, and like I believe they're awesome.
Yeah.
And that is just it because I put a lot of effort into them, a lot of research, a lot of heart and love and all of that. And for me personally, after all of that, like I can't have done all that to like produce something that is bad or that is crappy. So that is also, even as I was receiving rejections while trying to get an agent, I never saw it as a kind of like, oh, this story is bad. I just saw it as, oh, I need to improve this. I need to like take it to a higher level. I need to make it better. So I feel like for writers, like you just have to have faith and not just like blind and baseless faith. You should be like work hard, like get feedback, do research, like write the best story you can that would give you that much like confidence and faith in your story. So that when you go out there, whether it's to trying to get like a publisher or whether it's even to readers, because we've seen situations where a book came out like with so much excitement and then some readers didn't love it and then the
Yeah.
author's confidence was shot. And I've heard that actually makes some people like quit being published. Like they'll put out
Yeah.
one book and then they won't publish any book again because they couldn't deal with the feedback. So I feel like just have that faith, just have that love for your story, just have that confidence that what you have written is good. Be your number one fan. And even if maybe it's like, oh, this first book didn't hit the way you wanted it to, have that confidence that you can write something better. Like you have the skill, you have the passion, and just be your number one fan. Like that's my biggest advice for writers.
That's the perfect advice. And never to give up, really. Just have faith in yourself as well. Are there any books or authors that inspired you when you were writing, even if you were younger or now presently?
Yeah, I find like new inspirations, like because as I said, I always like research authors' journeys. So there is this podcast I used to listen to, and that was where I first heard about Stephanie Garber's like journey to publication. I feel like if you look at Stephanie Garber now with Caraval success, you might just be like, oh, like, it was all rainbow and sunshine. But that lady went through it and like her passion, her determination, like it really resonated with me. Like, I feel like more than the authors, like more than the books, the authors themselves inspire me. Like, they're who I really their stories and all of that. So inspired me. Then S.A. Chakraborty from City of Brass.
Yeah.
Also, like reading like the first like few pages of the City of Brass, I was like, okay, I want to, like as I said, with like the world building, the way it started to grow, like it's people telling me, you can make your book more fantastical. So when I saw her book, I was like, okay, I just love how grand her world was. So she
Yeah.
also inspired me. Then Sabah love the prose. Like I just love the prose of that book. Yeah. Then Mary E. Pearson with Dance of Thieves too. That one was like an overload of inspiration.
Yeah.
Then yeah. Then there is also this Nigerian author, Chimamanda Adichie. She writes these books about, she wrote Half of a Yellow Sun, Purple Hibiscus. That one, Purple Hibiscus, like right from high school. One of the few poets like 4 years ago. Like growing up, we weren't really big on reading. But like in school, in literature class, there were some books that we had to read for class. So Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Adichie was one of those. And like that was one of the first like prose work I really fell in love with. So yeah, like she also inspired me because she's Nigerian. And like now she's like such a big, like literary like powerhouse. So yeah, those are authors who have inspired me and inspired my journey.
They're actually like really and well-known authors as well, which is like aspiring to get you there as well. And my last question is, if you had to describe yourself in just 3 words, what would those be?
Wow. I love this question because I feel like I feel like at the end of the road, I'm starting to see myself in like a different light from what I would have thought like earlier. Like I know I'm a quiet person, but I've come to realize that I'm much more than a quiet person. So I feel like it's quiet or like I talk a lot like subjects that interest me and to people I like. So let me just say a bit reserved and then passionate because like my own writing journey so hasn't been easy. And when I announced getting an agent and then getting a book deal, that was one comment so many people made. They're like, wow, Lucia, you're resilient, like it's so inspiring. And I was like, oh wow. I feel like that was even when I paused because left to me, I was just pursuing a passion and blogging about it, talking about it. But it was their congratulations that made me pause and be like, oh wow, like this journey wasn't easy. And like I just kept going and going when I could have, you know, given up earlier. So it's like quiet, passionate, very passionate about writing and publishing, and then resilience. So yeah.
They're fantastic words and definitely describe you and your journey with writing as well. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
me for the interview. I hope you have a really good day today.